So they just passed a bill assisting both tenant and landlord with any deferred rent that was missed during the pandemic period. Is this really going to happen? Here's what we know so far. We're going to talk about it on the federal level, the state level, and more importantly, here at the Long Beach level and how it's going to impact both landlords and tenants. Federal lawmakers passed a $2 trillion stimulus package to assist with what we've been through with COVID. Some of those proceeds have been passed down through the states, and from the states, it's been passed down to the cities. So at the state level, the state wanted to oversee the disbursement, call it the reimbursement of the deferred rents, the rents that were missed from April 1st, 2020 through today. Okay, the state wanted to oversee it. Two cities decided that they wanted to oversee this themselves, right? Giving themselves more control. The city of LA and the city of Long Beach. And today, that's what we're gonna be focusing in on. We sat down with Mike Murchison. Mike Murchison, again, has his finger on the pulse at all levels, policy-making levels, and we asked him the questions regarding this Tenant Relief Act specific to Long Beach. Here's what he has to say. What was the amount of proceeds that were allocated for this program?
29 million won, and the mayor came out with it several weeks ago. The council had a discussion about the overall amount of money that we got from the feds, and the council agreed with the mayor to set aside 29 million for tenant assistance. It's really to pay back the deferred rent that's owed.
Do we believe that the 29 million is sufficient to cover the amount that is actually owed? Or do we have any idea on how much is owed to landlords at this moment?
I think that there's been some formulas out there that have been subjective, but estimates of 150 to 200 million dollars is owed in deferred rent.
Wow.
So you're talking, $15,000 to $25,000 per unit for a landlord in Long Beach. Bear in mind, Juan, there's 7,500 landlords in Long Beach.
Well, one thing that's interesting, when we were, through COVID, and I guess until now, we were interviewing property management companies, and the one thing we kept hearing was 95% of our tenants are still paying rent. So I guess from our perception, the majority of the tenants were still paying. So the fact that there's that much outstanding or owed to landlords, I guess, is not what I was expecting to hear. You
talk to individual people, you're going to get different answers, but the landlords I talk to, and I have about a relationship with, say, 400 of them, quite a few of them are owed, 15 to 20,000 per tenant per unit, because bear in mind, it's been going on for almost over a year now.
All in all, the fact that we have 29 million allocated to tenants/landlords is a very good thing.
Yeah, it's a good thing, but there's a lot of strings that are attached to it from the federal government.
So let's get into that. So my tenant lost his job, has not been able to pay the rent. Can I apply for funds right now? Because I keep hearing in the news that I could apply for help. Can they apply for help right now in the city of Long Beach?
Technically, no. Okay. And I expect that to change any moment. Could be the next couple of days, could be the next week or so. In talking with Development Services, they're in the final process of selecting a vendor that they will sign a contract with, and that vendor will run the program that the city has established. The city of Long Beach and the city of LA decided to do their own programs versus allowing the state of California to do it.
And that's one thing to note. Today we're highlighting Long Beach as a city, but if we're in cities outside of LA or Long Beach and you're a landlord that has not been able to collect rents from a tenant due to COVID, you could technically apply right now.
Here's my recommendation to those that fit that criteria. You all have state assembly, state senators that represent you geographically. I would highly recommend that if you are looking for the deferred rent that you're owed from a particular tenant and it's outside of Long Beach or Los Angeles, contact your state assembly or senator. They will help you. They'll provide the information of the phone number you need to call and all the information that goes along with it. That would be my strong recommendation.
The fact that the city council elected to not let the state oversee the distribution of the funds, what are your thoughts behind that? Is that good, bad?
I think anytime that you're in control of your own destiny, it's a good thing. I'd like to have seen Long Beach move a little bit faster. I can't tell you why that they're not up and running like the state. I imagine, like I said, only a couple days away. The biggest concern that I have is when you're getting monies from the federal government, these strings make it very difficult for you as a landlord to collect that deferred rent because you have to meet certain criteria.
So let's get into that criteria. So we're in Long Beach, and so one thing we need to know, we cannot apply just yet.
So say that you have 160 to 200,000 tenants that live in Long Beach. Currently, there's probably about 470,000 residents overall. The requirements from the federal government for deferred rent, get that payment going, is the tenant income level has to be less than 80% of the area median income. okay? So basically, you're talking down that poverty line level. That's not every tenant in Long Beach, as you and I both know, okay? When you look at the east side of Long Beach, probably not the criteria. So you're having a lot of landlords who are not going to be able to avail themselves of the city's program due to the federal government's requirements.
Even if you've not been able to collect, if your tenant has not been able to pay, you may not be eligible for the program.
Correct.
And then one thing, when we spoke earlier, you said that the majority of Long Beach will not be eligible for the program. Is that correct?
That's correct.
That doesn't accomplish the
Well,
goal.
I mean, it helps out some landlords, and that's a good thing.
Right.
Okay? But if you're trying to help out all the landlords, we need to figure out a different process than involving the federal government.
How can they go about finding out if they're in an area that's going to be approved? Where can they get more information at this point?
Well, unfortunately, if you as a landlord are going to go through the federal government process via the city of Long Beach, you're going to, number one, have to provide a lot of information about your tenant. Your tenant's going to have to provide a lot of information about income, okay? Not easy to do. You're asking a lot out of the tenant. What's the motivation of the tenant?
Right, because the protection is currently there for them.
And I expect the eviction moratorium to last potentially till the end of the calendar year, unfortunately.
Even though our numbers are improving?
Even though our numbers are improving.
Okay.
I mean, I hope that changes. Right now, I think it's set for June to expire. But, the will of Sacramento and LA County, those things change. And you should also add in there is that the anticipation of the amount of evictions that are going to happen, if just this one program's in place, it's going to be a very large number of evictions that are going to occur in Long Beach. And that means people basically losing their housing. And I know the city council doesn't want to have that to happen.
Let's talk about the situation where, let's say someone is in an area where they are going to be eligible. From what we're reading, it keeps saying that there might be assistance up to 80%. Why does it say up to 80% versus 80%? And what's going to be the determining factor to whether you qualify for 50 or what's going on with that?
There are different levels that are in the city's program. They've, as I mentioned to you, they got a third-party vendor that they basically turn it over to administer the program because the city doesn't have the resources to do it themselves, number one. Number two, the particulars you're asking, I really don't have a true answer for you on that. Okay. It's something I may be able to find out, but I don't have the immediate answer.
My thoughts of the assistance, the tenant relief fund of $29 million, it sounds like a large amount, but realistically, is it enough? And the strings attached, are they going to accomplish the goals that we really want them to do in terms of assisting both the tenant and the landlord? If in reality 80% of Long Beach doesn't apply, then that's going to hurt a lot of landlords and tenants. It's going to be beneficial in a very small percentage of Long Beach. I think the program is good, and I think we're just waiting on details to come out. There are landlords have been reaching out to us saying, where can I apply for these funds? We've been watching on the news, we've been hearing about it, but the reality is once the details come out, it may or may not apply to all, which that doesn't really help everyone if that's the case, but it's where we're at. In terms how this should be handled, here's what Mike has to say.
We've got 3 or 4 major rental property owner organizations in Long Beach. One, we have California Apartment Association, we have the Apartment Owners Association, we have the Apartment Association of California Southern Cities, and finally we have SPOA, which is the Small Property Owners Alliance. None of those 4 are being talked to by the city on policy decisions that impact landlords. None of them. Okay, that's the unfortunate side of it, number one. Number two, there's been this adversarial relationship that, a lot of it would be potentially blamed at the city between the tenant and the landlord. They're not communicating. Number one, you got a harassment policy that's an ordinance in the city of Long Beach currently. But I think it's time that the tenants and the landlords are able to sit down and try to mediate what the financial impact has been due to the pandemic. And the federal program with the strings and all that, that's not mediation, okay? You want to see a situation where the tenant comes to the table and says, I can afford to do X, okay? Landlord, what will you give me in return? Will you maybe stop any rental increases for a year or two? Will you cut the deferred rent that I owe you? Let's say I owe you $10,000. How about we make it $5,000 and call it a day? There's got to be some give and take, Juan, between the landlord and the tenant. Otherwise, you're going to leave a lot of landlords sitting out there without their deferred rent that's owed to them, and you're going to leave a lot of tenants potentially in an eviction process. And that brings in the attorneys.
I guess our future is not looking very good in terms of the potential evictions that might be happening?
It doesn't look good immediately, but there are smarter people than me that have come up with programs that get the landlord and the tenant talking. And I think that programs like that, the city needs to look at in more detail to see what they can do to advocate for it or to support it. Because at the end of the day, if we're all going to be in this deal to kind of climb out of it, we got to work together. It can't be a one-sided process.
Tell us a little bit more about the program, about what you guys are presenting, and what are the chances that the city says yes to that?
We've had initial conversations with the city. We're actually meeting with city staff at the end of this week, Friday. And we've got commitments from the Vice Mayor, Rex Richardson, who's been very supportive of the concept of mediation and bringing that forward. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed, but I think that you're going to see some sort of an announcement in the next 2 or 3 weeks from our standpoint about the type of program that we're going to push forward. And it's going to be up to the city to kind of rubber stamp it. They're not the ones that are going to be administering it. It'll be through a third party. But what it does do is it brings the tenant and the landlord together so that they can work out whatever they're going to move forward with, whether it be a new lease, whether it be reducing the deferred rent that's owed, whether it be no increases in rent, whatever it is, we need to stabilize that relationship, keep people in their homes.
And I agree 100%. Let me go back to the eviction moratorium, just because we've talked about that in the past. We've been telling folks, hey, the COVID numbers are getting better. Right. We believe that come June 1st that moratorium would be lifted.
Well, the moratorium, it's there to, in theory, protect tenants. But as you and I both know, tenants are getting their jobs back, or jobs are coming available to them, and so they're taking on new jobs.
Other jobs.
Right? Other jobs.
Other jobs, correct.
Other jobs. So in theory, you would think that the eviction moratorium would go away. But the political base in Sacramento, and specifically in LA County, is such that the expectation politically is that the eviction moratorium may get extended, and what they may do, while they may go on a month-by-month basis, may go 60 days later. So if it expires June 1, they may kick it to August. I have no guarantee for your viewers, I have no guarantees on whether that eviction moratorium is going to go away or not. Anybody that tells you, they're betting in Vegas on that one.
Okay, so if you're a landlord and or tenant in Long Beach, you've been hearing about this Tenant Relief Act, $29 million to help pay for any deferred rent that was not paid, since April 1st of 2020 through today. The details on how you could apply are still being generated at the city level. We would expect in the next 7 to 14 days for there to be a lot of information out there on who qualifies and how to go about putting in that application. Details are on their way. Here at Sage Real Estate, our goal is to give apartment owners, smaller apartment owners, independent apartment owners, all the information that's out there. Mike Murchison is doing the same thing, and so please make sure to log onto our website, sign up for our investor resources, and we'll keep you folks up to date. With that being said, we'll see you next time.